Red Balloon Rock Talk.
Hey, that was my version of Wayne's World. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Lead Balloon Rock Talk. How's it going, everybody?
Hello.
I'm Mark, and this is my brother Jim. We're trying to do this every week, trying to get you guys stirred up on some different things happening in the music world, not just rock. And tonight is no exception to that. I think we have a pretty cool show for you. Shorter than our other ones, I hope. But what we're going to try to do tonight is share with you some lesser known bands that we thought would be really cool for people to get uh, into their line of sight and maybe take a listen to them and maybe open up to something that they never experienced before. I certainly know that the band you've picked is something I wasn't really expecting until I started listening yesterday. I couldn't get enough. I really was
Yeah.
really impressed. I was like, wow. And I decided not to watch anymore because I wanted you to cover it because
Well, and I was watching and listening to some of the band you chose today, and I was a little surprised at that choice. That you chose. It almost seems like I chose something that you would have been. It would be more in your
awesome.
wheelhouse, and what you
Yeah.
chose would be more in my wheelhouse. But nonetheless, I mean, I think it's great. And so, yeah, we're each going to focus on one band tonight that really mine came into. Um, I discovered them in the last couple weeks. And how about you?
No, I've known about them for probably 4 years now.
Okay.
I guess I'm just taking a stab in the dark. Um, but that doesn't matter. I mean, I'm not like, you know, well, I'll tell you about it when I'm into
Well, and
it.
I find it interesting because one thing about this YouTube channel, as we've been researching, and I mean, both you and I have discovered we have discovered some groups, some bands, some music that we just had no idea was out there that really has uh, been wonderful. It keeps expanding our world, and I think that's one of the great things about this. So.
Well, before you get started, I have one thing I need to say, and that is, let's go Flyers! Game number 7 against the Islanders tonight. So if you watch this in 4 years, it'll make absolutely no sense to you. But basically, I'm a Flyers fan, and tonight is Game 7. It's all tied up. It's a big game here right now against the Islanders tonight. So I'm very excited for the Flyers to win tonight.
All
Anyway,
right. Well, that
go
explains that.
Go Phillies. That's how I go with this. So, all right, I'm going to let you roll first today.
Okay.
So let's get going.
All right. So the band that I chose um, that I just discovered, and and as I've gotten to listening to them, they're phenomenal. And the band is called Fanny, Fanny, and it's an odd sounding name. And there's been some speculation. Well, I'll get into that in just a minute. So Fanny is an all-female band. They formed in 1969, and they were in existence until 1975. However, the original lineup kind of broke apart around 1973, and uh, they they were phenomenal musicians. Still are. They're all still around.
Go Flyers.
Um, but phenomenal musicians. They're a blues-based group, and you know, a traditional lineup in terms of electric guitar, and that was June Millington, and she played guitar, electric and acoustic, and a lot of slide guitar, true blues style playing, and she was also on vocals. And then Jean Millington, her sister, was on bass guitar and did vocals. And then Nikki Barclay was on keyboards and vocals. And keyboards, I mean, really piano and some Hammond organ as they progressed. And then Alice DeBurr on drums and vocals. And a lot of what they did was original material. They were phenomenal songwriters. If you listen to their original pieces, really nicely constructed, and some I mean, their musicianship was just incredible. Very tight band, very tight vocals, harmonies, vocal harmonies, and the June's ability to maneuver between uh, rhythm and lead guitar was just wonderful. And
You also left out something I think is important, that the sisters actually come from the Philippines.
true, that's true. Yeah, so June and Jean had immigrated with their family from the Philippines to the United States in 1961. Actually, their father was a U.S. serviceman who had married a Filipino woman. And so here was an all-female band, and two of them were what they consider persons of color. And unfortunately, they met with more so on the female side, just tremendous sexism, and they burned out due to the pressures of trying to make it as an all female band. But what's interesting about them, in addition to their musicianship, is that they were the first all female band to be signed to a major record label, Reprise Records. They put out four albums, but the first three were from the original lineup. The last one was a different lineup. But the first album, Fanny, was 1970. Charity Ball was the second album in 71. Fanny Hill was in 72, and then Mother's Pride was in 73. And uh, they actually had a couple of their songs make it into the top 40 at the time. The one that I recommend if you want to kind of check them out, and you can find videos on YouTube, but you can also hear their albums on Spotify. I recommend three songs to kind of get yourself acclimated to what they do. The first one is called Charity Ball, which was their first top 40 original, and that was off of the second album. And then Ain't That Peculiar, which was a Smokey Robinson cover. Make mine stronger, no, ain't that peculiar? Ain't that peculiar? And then Hey Bulldog, which is a Lennon and McCartney cover.
Yeah,
and just
they did,
great.
They did a Cream.
Yeah, they did Badge. They covered Badge as well.
That was, and I'm not a big fan of covers, and they did a nice job with that.
Yeah.
And it's ironic because I heard when I was listening to them, you can hear like subtleties from several bands of that genre.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if you heard it, but literally with the Hammond organ in there, some Emerson, Lake and Palmer came to my mind right away.
Well, some of the singing actually reminded me of Geddy Lee from Rush. There's this high-pitched but raspy and in-your-face sound at times. I mean, it was raw.
They're just a gritty band.
Yeah, it was a gritty band. And they ended up influencing the Runaways, the Bangles, the Go-Go's. So without Fanny, you wouldn't really have these other bands succeed, I think, as well as they did. Fanny kind of opened the door. I mean, Fanny opened for bands like Slade and Jethro Tull, Humble Pie, Deep Purple. David Bowie and Todd Rundgren were huge fans of Fanny.
Yeah, and Todd Rundgren actually produced one of their albums, too.
Exactly. And they actually were the backup band in the studio for Barbra Streisand. And I mean, they were really well-respected musicians. Actually, the keyboardist, Nikki Barclay, played with Joe Cocker.
She's phenomenal. I mean,
yeah.
I got chills when I first heard her start singing. I was like, and then she opened up. I was like, she's not Janis, definitely right there.
Yeah.
A little step below her, she had that power.
Yep.
She had that raspiness. She had that really good. She just could pound out some
Yeah.
notes, and I
Yeah.
was very impressed with her
Yep.
musicality. And her playing was phenomenal. Just
Yep.
yeah, I just was just blown away.
But June Millington is phenomenal guitarist, but she actually burned out. She found that dealing with all the sexism and all that energy that went into having to prove themselves time and time again as that, not just that they were a great band, but they could do it as females. I mean, it took its toll, and she left in '73. But and that's the thing. They said, we would go to play a show, and they would have to take it was like the first 3 or 4 songs they had to play just to prove themselves, and then people were like, "Oh, okay, you're not just girls. You guys really play," and that can take a toll. So they actually June and Jean and a woman that they had actually played in a previous band with called Bree Darling. The three of them have reformed, and they call themselves Fanny Walk the Earth, and they put out an album in 2018. So they are starting to kind of get back out there, and I hope people will check them out. They, I heard something. I heard an interview talking about Fanny a little bit, and the question comes up: why didn't they make it as big, any bigger? And I mean, I think some of the reasons I talked about, and somebody did also say the name of the band may have been detrimental, in that it may have turned some people off. Again, we talked about a little bit about this with the Kinks, but does a name influence how people listen or respond to a band? I think that shouldn't matter. Ultimately, if you listen to their material, it's great.
Well, I can say that too. I have three bands in my mind right now, like Puddle of Mud, Saliva, and Disturbed. These are
Hmm.
all hardcore bands, and when you hear their names, you're just like Saliva.
Yeah,
What?
yeah,
But if you get past the name and just listen to
yeah.
you can just be blown away by something that you just never quite considered before.
Yep,
I just, I just think it's phenomenal that today we are allowed to have that ability to be different.
yep,
Look up female bands, all female bands worldwide. There's so many of them now,
yep.
and the list is out there. And I know it wasn't complete because I went to the Z's just to check on something, and Zepparella was not on there.
Yeah,
And they're actually a really good cover band for Zeppelin. So if you ever
yep.
want to hear us,
And that's something we haven't really talked about, our female bands. So I thought that was a good one. And it covers the period of time back in, the real rock, the initial rock era. So let's go to yours now.
before I jump into mine, what was your so now that you've been exposed to Fanny, are you thinking that you want to go and pick up not necessarily a CD, but go and put it on your Spotify, see what you can find?
Oh, I've
Maybe
already added it to some of my Spotify lists.
have you?
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's songs that I definitely will return to, for sure. I mean, they're up there with,
Blown
uh,
away by the musicianship. I mean, every
yep,
one of them really just solid. They knew their instruments. They played super tight.
yep,
I just think, if you really give them a good listen, you're going to be like, I'm really, you know, I'm not saying that you're going to run out and change your whole persona of music taste over Fanny, but really, I think the idea was expose people to this new idea of, hey, here's a band that's been kind of forgotten a little bit.
yep.
Um, this is like our
It's
this
to
is
add. It's to
like
add
our
to the
this
list.
is Spinal Tap series right here for you and I. It's not the band Spinal Tap, but the idea or the concept behind Spinal Tap.
Yep,
It's like there's
yeah,
a band that's just on that cusp,
yep,
and they need that little bit of recognition. So
yeah. And
I'm glad you picked that one because when you told me you were going to do that, I hadn't listened to anything, and then you and I were forcing each other to listen to each other's music. Just
Yeah.
before
Well, like I
thought
said, I mean, you know, I like when I research something and then I'm introduced to something else that I was not aware of, and it's an addition to, it's not in place of.
right, it's a spin-off of it. So
So yeah,
yeah, I think that's what's really cool. It's perpetually growth.
yep.
I find that to be the case. I'm constantly looking at something new, and it's like you hit the scroll button. Oh, what's that? And you, you,
Yeah.
you touch it, which I'm hoping people will do. They'll hit the scroll button and go, "What is this rock talk? This lead balloon thing?" And they'll hit it, listening to us on an
Which
episode.
reminds you, which reminds me, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, tell your friends, tell your neighbors. Um,
Screaming
that
at the
this is the
back of the
exciting
house.
new entertainment. So
Yeah, this is pure fun for us. So
yep.
nothing real serious, very lighthearted. So hey, if you are somebody who's serious into music and we say something that offends you, on us, it's just us talking about stuff between brothers. But we
Go to a
want to
different
make
channel.
sure different channel, yeah, or just keep in mind that everyone's entitled to their own thoughts, and that's
Yep.
exactly where we are.
Yep.
Cool. All right. So I guess it's my turn, right?
Yep.
And so you liked my pick. You liked listening to what I.
Yeah, I did. In fact, I did recognize one of the tunes that I listened to. I've heard it somewhere. I'm not sure where, but yeah,
So
the stuff that I was able to listen to, I really like.
cool. Well, I'm going to start mine off because the band that I'm going to talk about is something that is actually very local to you. And down in D.C., Washington, D.C. But I started listening to him about 4 years ago, and it was a fluke. I was flipping through the channels late at night, and I happened to catch a concert. And I'm always intrigued about live music, and I liked what I heard, so I just paused on it for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then it started listening to it longer. It was 15 minutes in, and I ended up watching the full concert. And at the end, I was like, "What the heck did I just watch?" And I think it was on public television, to be honest with you. And I was scrambling to find a pen to write the name down because it was so different. I had never heard of it. But the band is it's more of a group, not a band. But it's called Thievery Corporation, and they are the house band, if you will, of the 930 Club down in Washington D.C. However, they've been around since 1995. When Rob Garza and lounge owner Eric Hilton came together for their mutual love of the club scene and club life and their love of music. And they were into like dubstep and bossa nova and jazz records and things like that. They got heavily influenced by Jamaica and Jamaican sounds. So yeah, those two guys, they do a lot of samples, play their own music, and produce everything. It's their own label, and they've been around since '95. So here we are in the year 2020. That's 25 years
Yeah.
of music, and they're still going strong. And they have a huge following, and it's not just here in the United States; it's around the globe, because they do bring in band members from Brazil and Jamaica and other places, and they just have this really cool eclectic sound. And there's like in a live set list, you'll go from Jamaican into rap, or you might go into anything really. There are so many subgenres that they dip into. Indian music, I'll try to read some stuff because there's no way I could memorize all of this for the show tonight. And in some cases, I'm going to read their own personal words, especially like Rob's words, as it relates to this. And, the language of the groups, as they say here, are through English and Spanish and French, Italian, Persian, Portuguese, Romanian, and Hindi. Those are just some of the group's influences in terms of where they're pulling their sounds from, and some of how the people who are singing. And you never hear a song. Sometimes you're like, 2 or 3 songs go in a set and there isn't an English word spoken, and the next thing you know, there's a song that's in English, and it just keeps you thinking. Just a kind of quick fun fact that on August 1st in 2009, the band opened up for Paul McCartney at the FedEx Field in Landover, Maryland.
Mm.
So that's not a small venue, and is definitely not a small act to be,
Opening
in
for
front of.
Yeah.
Opening. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So let me just kind of jump off of here just for a second and just kind of give you some of the band members here. Rob Garza is bass guitar, keyboards, and he produces. Eric Hilton plays the bass, the guitar, keyboards, production. Some of the other members are Jeff Franca on drums, Rob Myers, unbelievable guitarist. Rob is phenomenal. He plays the guitar and sitar. And this is where I came up with doing the whole Thievery Corporation from our last episode talking about Woodstock. And we brought up, nobody really plays sitar. And I was like, hold on. I do know someone that plays sitar. And I was like, you know what? This would be a perfect opportunity to talk about Thievery Corporation. And, I love listening to it when I just need to just come down from something, or I just need to be in a relaxed mode. And I just don't need loud. I just need kind of right there, kind of, it's not in the background, but it's not really in the foreground either. And it just keeps me inspired and motivated. And it really keeps me on my toes is thinking. Sometimes it allows me to get into my thoughts a little bit. But also, some of the studio vocalists are Natalia, Lulu. Oh my God, her voice is so hypnotic. She's an amazing. Shayna, Raquel, Mr. Lift, Notch, Puma, and CI. These are all people that are on stage at any given time for these guys. And there's others too. That's just a few. They've listed over 10 albums in the time they started. I have a couple albums that I really like. Lebanese Blonde is a good album if you're into that.
And it's that's the title, the title song is the one that I've heard.
I have a million thoughts are flowing through my mind.
Yeah, and that's also a single. Radio Retaliation is a good song to listen to. My personal favorite, and I hope you could put this on as a link to check out, is Warning Shots. Never get tired of listening to it. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll just listen to that song, and then I'll find another version of it, a live version of it, I'll listen to that, and then I'll do it again. So I'll listen to it like 3 times in a row, and it's never quite the same in length and in how it's played. And that's the beautiful part of live music. And they really do such a phenomenal job as live, and I prefer listening to them live because the interaction with the crowd. And if you watch the videos from YouTube on them, especially at the 530 Club, although there's other ones from around the world that you can watch as well, I think is worthwhile. And I don't think anybody really, you can't really get too disappointed. I mean, if it's something that you're not quite, not everything that they play is my genre, and I do skip over certain things. But, so this is right out of their website. I'm going to just paraphrase some of this stuff. I'll read it verbatim. In some cases, I'll skip through some of it. But this is them speaking about them, and I think it wraps everything up so nicely. So, how many highly successful musical artists do you know that have thrived for 20 years without a radio hit, a big budget video, or major label backing. That's a very cool way to start this whole thing.
Yeah.
Moreover, have managed to do a high-profile TV appearances, own and operate their own independent label since day one, sell several million albums, and continue to expand their fan base across the globe each year. They've collaborated with such uniquely famed artists such as David Byrne, Perry Farrell, The Flaming Lips, Anshuka Shankar, Femi Kuti. I don't know who these guys are, but I have to look into that. Sao Jorge, Bebel Gilberto, and been featured on major film soundtracks such as Garden State. They've headlined top music festivals such as Coachella and Lollapalooza, and have influenced a whole generation of electronic producers and DJs.
Yeah.
Add these elements together, you can arrive at one conclusion: Rob Garza and Eric Hilton, aka Thievery Corporation. Such really cool.
Yeah.
Well,
they're certainly eclectic. They certainly pull from a wide range, very experimental.
If you're not in the mood, like I love listening to reggae, and they just have a really cool reggae sound. And I'll get into something in just a minute here. I want to read something else. Longtime fans of Thievery Corporation are keenly aware that the duo has been heavily influenced by Jamaican music. Since their debut LP, Sounds from the Thievery Hi-Fi, the production team has applied a uniquely diverse dub ethos and aesthetic to their music. And that's what I'm saying. It's not the same, they got their own way of playing it. After playing tribute to Bossa Nova and easy listening and inspirations on their 2014 release, Saudade, I listened to that last night, actually. It's very mellow. If you're not into like almost elevator music style, which I'm not, you'll probably turn it off, which I did. And they set their sights on the culturally rich and warm musical environs of Port Antonio, Jamaica. So they're heavily inspired. They spend a lot of time in Jamaica and being influenced by not just the culture, but all the different types of music sounds that they were listening to. They say here also that people couldn't believe Robbie Myers, who's the guitar, Rob Myers, our guitarist, wasn't Jamaican, laughs Hilton. I think they're used to people coming down from London or LA to record rock or pop records, and they were amazed we had such a handle on their sound. So compliments.
Yeah.
Such a phenomenon. And I think that just lays credence to how, and I always say this about all musicians, that serious musicians will invest themselves in learning, about a culture or learning something about a new instrument, especially percussionists. They get to these new sounds, and that's another thing. They got such a great percussion section.
Yep.
As well. Few musical artists are as diverse as Thievery Corporation, moving from space rock, hip-hop, Indian trip-hop, and dub, French torch songs, and shoegazer blissfulness. It's remarkable, cohesive ease. And they do, I just can't believe the show. It's just flows. Yep. Boundaries and following trends have never been a part of Garza and Hilton's agenda. And boom, that is true. Yep. They blow everything out of the water. Explains Rob Garza, we've never been concerned with fitting into the music industry. We started making music in the liquor room of DC's 18th Street Lounge with random bits of music gear among boxes of spirits. Approaching our music as a production duo has allowed us to never feel limited to one particular sound and traverse many fascinating musical landscapes. And it's so true. And I don't even know where to begin to tell people to start, but because my musical influence for this particular group started with a live concert, that's how I would suggest you go listen to them. Don't go to an album, go into something that's live and listen to the whole thing straight through. Don't listen to just the first song or maybe a song and a half and go, give it a good listen. Go through the whole thing. I can't stress it enough. Trust me, you'll like it by the end of the night. You'll go, that was definitely worth a good listen.
Well, because they are so eclectic, because they do explore so many different kinds of music, and you can't do it all in one tune. They're not, like a blues band. the common denominator between songs is the blues structure. Whereas with their music, there is no common denominator,
It's
and
whatever
between albums, there's no common denominator.
they throw it
And
out the window. It's whatever they're thinking at the time, like
yeah,
whatever's them creatively, they just follow that path, and I love that spirit. And they have millions of followers, millions, and it's worldwide, 25 years, and they're going strong. But yet nobody has ever heard of them.
yep,
Weird. But
yep,
once people do listen to it, it's like I get a 50-50 mix when I introduce the band to certain people. They either really like it or they're like, nah, this is no good. What can we turn it? You know, and I'm like, and that could be the case in any.
oh yeah, it's the case with every band.
I
It
think,
goes back to the whole identity thing that we have talked about.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but I think between what Thievery Corporation and what Fanny have put out, um, here are two bands that have uh, a lot of stuff that um, can build on somebody's music library,
Yeah.
without a doubt.
With 10 albums out there, and actually, Eric Hilton just put out a solo single, which he's never done before. So that just was released. So if you go onto their website, you can check that out. And they just put a new album out, Symphonia or something like that. But they're just constantly making music.
Good.
I love the fact. I think because they've been around for 25 years, they show that test of time, which I'm always talking about. It's always new and refreshing. It's not that same sound. Yeah, we always look forward to a specific sound with this particular band. Rush had that same problem when they first started.
Yep.
The music was so complicated that critics are like, no. And Geddy Lee's voice, no. And you know what? Here they are to prove everybody wrong. And because these guys do everything themselves, they produce their own music, they record their own music, they produce themselves, they go out and tour on their own. They seem to have made it just fine doing what they're doing. And you know what? That's a testament to any band out there that if you really want this and you put the work into it, you can make it.
Well, I think one of the underlying factors for both these bands, and they're separated by decades, of course. Fanny at the early '70s and Thievery Corporation much more contemporary. Both bands refuse to succumb to corporate demands. If you look at what Fanny, what they had to resist, the record label was really putting pressure on them to play up the sexiness of being a female, to do things that were more flashy, and they chose to follow their musical path. They were not flashy or sexy flashy in what we consider that way. I mean it's a very sexist way of looking at it. They chose and followed their vision and insisted on following their vision. Thievery Corporation, because they run their whole show. I mean they have they're it. They're not answering to a record label, and they can follow their musical vision. And I think that says a lot about these two bands. And maybe that's partly why they're not as well known, because they don't have the backing of the labels, because they haven't kowtowed to the labels. So that part of it is they're not being recognized because of that.
When you see them live in concert, there isn't a small crowd. There's a very large crowd there. If you're headlining in Lollapalooza, come on, look at some of the over the years. Look at some of the lineups in Lollapalooza.
Yep.
Big, ginormous bands every which way you talk, and that's not a joke. That their ability to play in a format like that in that kind of a setting just says they're great musicians.
Yep.
Anyway, that's our show, I think, for the day. And, it was a little shorter than we normally do, which was always a good
Not
thing.
by much.
we hope you like this one and tune in for next week. We don't know what we're doing next week, do we? So
No, we
we're going to
don't.
be surprised. Anyway, it's always going to be something fun and exciting, that's for sure. Again, we are Lead Balloon Rock Talk. I'm Mark, and this is my brother Jim. And we hope you had a good time tonight listening to us. Pass it on to your friends, everybody. All right? Have a good one. We'll see you later. And go Flyers! Woo!
Bye.